Hello everyone, I'm Rabbi Chaitovsky here from my office at BMH-BJ. Welcome to another video Dvar. This week's Torah portion, Kedoshim, it's probably my favorite Torah portion of them all. Contains a verse, contains a pasuk that most of us are probably familiar with. And the verse, of course, is chapter 19, verse 18, the very end that says, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, one should love his or her neighbor as themselves. Ani Hashem, I am the Lord. And the concept of loving your neighbor is a central one in Jewish tradition. Famous Gemara in the Yerushalmi, in the Jerusalem version of the Talmud, has a discussion between Rabbi Akiva and Ben Azai as to what's the most important verse in the Torah. And Ben Azai says it has to do with a verse from the book of Breshit, Zeh Sefer Toldot Adam. This is the history of humanity, tracing our lineage back to Adam and Eve. And Rabbi Akiva says the most important verse in the Torah is this one, love your neighbor as yourself. It's a klal gadol b'Torah. This is the major and central pillar of the Torah. And I've often pointed it out in many different venues and classes that if we imagine the Torah being 5 books, and we know that the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, is the middle book of the Torah, and this is the middle section of the middle book of the Torah, and in the middle of that middle section of the middle book is the verse, love your neighbor as yourself, and everything else grows out of it. It really is. Rabbi Akiva was talking more than conceptual. Rabbi Akiva was also talking physically and geographically. This is the central idea of the Torah. And it's a difficult idea. It sounds simple, but it's really difficult. The Ramban, in his comment on the verse, points out how unnatural this is, to love your neighbor as yourself. Most people would love themselves more than their neighbor. It's virtually impossible if you want to translate the verse as love your neighbor just like you love yourself. Well, the Ramban points out that that's almost impossible, because it was actually Rabbi Akiva himself in another section of the Talmud who pointed out that chayecha kodem, a person is always going to put his or her own life first and their own needs first. That's a natural thing to do. And to expect someone to put that aside in deference to someone else, that is a difficult expectation. So the Ramban does a couple of things with the verse. Number one, he says that just translating it as love your neighbor as yourself, it is difficult. He says that's a mistranslation. He would rather translate it as be loving to your neighbor. Demonstrate your love to your fellow human being. And number two, he tries to explain how one might do that. So imagine the following scenario. Your friend calls you, and your friend says, you're not going to believe it. I just won the lottery. I just won $500,000 in the lottery. And your reaction is probably going to be, great, that's wonderful, I'm so happy for you. And you'll probably mean it, because you wish your neighbor well, you wish your friend well. And then, about a week or two later, your friend calls you again and says, you are not going to believe it. I just won the lottery again. And now what's your reaction? You might feign or fake true joy for your neighbor who just did the impossible by winning 2 lotteries in a row. But in all likelihood, you're going to start wondering a little bit, like, how did he manage to do that? Is that fair? He just won last time, and now he wins again? I can't believe it. And you may hang up the phone, and you're going to be thinking all of these unusual thoughts. You're going to undermine your ability, your demonstration of true love for your neighbor. Because the Ramban says loving your neighbor means to be happy for their successes, even as you are happy for your own. And to be as sensitive to their troubles as you are to your own. And that is not always an easy thing to do. And that's probably why Rabbi Akiva thought that this was a central idea and a central pillar of the Torah. It's not supposed to be easy. It really isn't. But it's something we're supposed to work on every single day. And perhaps the example I gave you seemed a little far-fetched, but that's okay. I'm sure we could all think of others that may try our patience and may test us and test our relationship with those around us. But that's what it's all about. The Torah is first and foremost about relationships. Relationships with God, relationships with ourselves, and relationships, of course, with those around us. And the central idea of the Torah is that we must do our best to demonstrate love, care, and concern for the person next to us, for the person who lives next door to us, for the person we may interact with at work or out and about in town or shopping or across the tennis court. Whatever it is, love your neighbor as yourself is a daily motto that makes life, makes Jewish life, makes human life worth living. Have a wonderful Shabbat, and hopefully we'll see you in Shul.